Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming out and joining us today for our webinar. My name is Paul Jeffries, and I am the Reforestation Advisor for ArborGen in the north half of Alabama, all of Mississippi, and West Tennessee. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to come out and join us and to go over the webinar that we have today for you. I will go ahead and get started. As I said, I am Paul Jeffries. And today we're going to talk about a little bit where we have come from the past and how we're going into the future, and how, as landowners like myself, you can find ways to increase your value and increase your return on your timberland. Tree improvement started back in the 1950s. And at that time, they employed foresters, U.S. Forest Service, consulting foresters, to go out and to look for what they called pretty trees. And when they did so, they would record the location, harvest some material, some seed from the trees, and then bring it back. Well, as some of you may have heard in the past, there used to be a term that was called second generation genetically improved. And those trees made it through the first selection phase, and they went to what was called the second generation. That was, at the time, some of the top genetics that was available, but those trees were made available or came out in the 1980s. Today, we have moved on to a new process called controlled pollination, and now we have trees that are selectively crossed for the better traits. Instead of relying on the old second gen or generational method of selecting better trees, we've now moved on to the controlled pollination phase. With the controlled pollination, we can actually cross families for better traits. It's not always about the fast growth, but it's about the straighter stems, smaller limbs, less forks, things that just make up what we call pretty trees. As you can see here in this slide, this is a second generation base genetic that's 14 years old. I actually made this photo, and one thing I want you to notice about it is, notice that the stems are not straight. You have large limbs that are hanging on later in the stand's life. You have to the right there, you have forked stems, and you just have a tree that for all intents and purposes is just only going to make it to a pulpwood grade of tree. As compared to the stem here, which is the, hang on just a second. So as compared here to the 14-year-old tree that is on the right side of the screen, same age, is an MCP tree. As you see, the limbs have all shed off. The stem is straighter, and the crown appears to be smaller. All of those are quality traits that can be selected for in the pollination process, or the selective crossing process. With cross-pollination, or mass control pollination, as we call it at ArborGen, we take an elite mother that has traits that we want to carry on, that we want to keep or exemplify with in the offspring. We cross that with an elite father that we have selected, gone through a screening process, and found that his traits are quality traits that we want to carry on. And then we cross those, and that product is called mass control pollinated. I like to refer to this, and some of you may have heard some of my presentations in the past, but I like to refer to us as the eHarmony of trees. We take an elite mother and we take an elite father and we cross them. And then, as with eHarmony, they claim that they put their clients through a screening process that you can find your mate. And with this, we put the parents or the seedlings or the trees through a screening process. And when we find two trees that we think are going to make elite offspring, we cross them. And that is how we get the great growth traits, great quality traits, the fast growth, and just the overall better trees. That's how we get those from the cross-pollination. But not all MCP hybrids perform the same. We have hundreds of families that we are currently testing, always testing. And just because we cross them and they are produced by controlled pollination, they're not all the same. Some of them, some of the traits may not be exemplified that we want to be expressed. So it takes a lot of testing and it takes a lot of work to make sure that our clients and our partners are getting the families that they need to help achieve the goals that they have set for their reforestation project. So here's a video of the controlled pollination process. As you see here, the individual that's there in the lift is working with the trees that have the bags over the flowers. Now, within each one of those bags is anywhere from 5 to 6 flowers. This past year, ArborGen alone, we put up 1.4 million bags in our 6 orchard complexes that we have within the company. These bags are visited twice in a 2-week window just to make sure the pollination is successful. Now, the individual you see there in the bucket, he has a container on the end of his pneumatic air gun that has a particular pollen from a tree that we know the pedigree of. We know the pedigree of all these trees that you see, and they are pollinated so long, and it's such a large effort to get the flowers pollinated. Once the flowers are pollinated, the bags are removed, and as you see there, the individual is selecting the mature cones. Once the cones are taken back to the facility, they are then allowed to mature, and they are allowed to, and then we extract the seed from it. As you see here in this photo, you will see the bands that we place on the limbs in our orchards. This is to make sure that we do not get any contamination within our MCP. Purity is of the utmost importance here, because when you order a controlled pollinated family from ArborGen, we are going to make sure that that is the exact family that you will be getting when it comes time to plant your property. Here's a video with my colleague, Jason Cromer, explaining the process.
System straight from our orchards where we're tagging absolutely everything, and we go through a system straight from our orchards where we're tagging absolutely everything, and we're following a very strict process that then goes into the nurseries and planted. And when it comes and goes through each program and changes hands with each individual, there's a system of tagging and fine details that aren't overlooked. People that are growing the crop and trying to put it in the ground and then shipping it to you, they treat it as if it's going on their own land. Every nursery manager that we have puts a lot of detail into knowing where everything's in the field and growing it to spec and getting it to quality. We make sure you're gonna get the quality that you asked for. If it's not meeting spec in the nursery, we don't count it as inventory.
Okay, so thank you, Jason, for that and explaining how we keep the purity of our seed at ArborGen. Again, it's the utmost importance that we keep the families separate, and we do go through extensive lengths to make sure that when you order a family from us, say it's AGM 36, we want to make sure that we are confident and you're comfortable knowing that you are getting that family that you are ordering. Now, going back to the benefits of controlled pollination, open pollinated seedlings are just what they say, or what the name means. It's open pollinated. We do not control the pollination on those, so we can only vouch for 50% of the genetic background of that. We do not know the father that pollinated that flower, and pollen can travel for miles. So in open pollinated families, you're going to have a higher level of variation between individuals within your planting, simply because for all intents and purposes, they're half siblings. We don't know. So with open pollination, you can expect to get at least, you can expect to get 50% of the stand being, ending up being pulpwood. Pulpwood in some areas and a lot of the depressed timber markets in the Southeast, especially in my area where my property is located in North Alabama, pulpwood is the lowest valued product. There are stands on my personal property that I can't get thin because the pulpwood market is not there at the moment. So if why would you want to plant something that is only going to yield or is going to yield a lot of pulpwood? Your all other options, you're basically limited. With MCP, however, poles, saw timber, chip and saw, and pulpwood are all possible having a high percentage of your stand of your final harvest is going to be these products. So if your landowner objectives are to maximize your value of your stand and maximize the return on your investment of what you're going to get by using ArborGen controlled pollination, then if that's your goal, then you want to use the controlled pollinated seedlings and produce those higher value products. Otherwise, a lot of your stand is going to be the lowest value product of pulpwood, and you won't be maximizing the return on your investment. As Steve McKeon put it at one time, and I'll read this: landowners have one opportunity to influence the genetic quality of seedlings planted in a stand. If the wrong choices are made, the landowner will suffer the consequences of those decisions for 25 years or longer. Steve here is explaining the importance of the decision that a landowner makes when it comes time to reforest their timberland. I've said in the past, one of the most stressful events in the life of a timberland owner, or one of the most stressful events that timberland owner is going to go through, is the reforestation part of the stand, because there are so many aspects that have to line up and have to fall into place. Site preparation, mechanical site prep, making sure that you've got the right seedlings, lining up the planter. All of those are things that a landowner or a forestry consultant is going to have to work with in order to get the stand reforested properly. When it comes time, like with picking the genetic quality of the seedlings, make the easy decision and go with the best genetic that you can go with at that time. That way you're setting yourself up for success as you get 25 years, 30 years into the rotation and it comes time to start harvesting. You're going to have a better quality product growing on your timberland that's worth way more at the end instead of the pulpwood. I like to say comically that when you pick the genetic, it's like picking your spouse. You're going to live with this decision for the next several years. You can start over, but it gets really expensive when you have to. Now, on the graph on the right side, the annual mass production of specific crosses of loblolly pine seedlings, as you can see from their induction in the year 2000, every year they have gone up in production, with the exception of between 2011 and 2012. What is driving that increase in production is simple economics, demand. The demand for these seedlings are increasing every year, with the exception of a few years which have had dips. For the most part, though, the demand for these seedlings is increasing every year. As you see here in this slide, this is made up of an actual planting of 9 mount tracts that were planted and studied, that were planted with higher genetics. The little green ones, are saw timber trees or saw timber potential trees. These trees are showing that they have the potential, if left continue to grow out to maturity, or is going to produce a saw timber quality stem. The red zeros are non-saw timber trees. They have a defect, either whether it was genetic or environmental. A genetic effect could be something as a fork susceptibility to fusiform rust. Something has attacked that tree that is going to keep it from producing a saw timber tree. And then the yellow Ds are simply trees that have died. As you can see here with the open pollinated stands, and this is made up of open pollinated test stands, as you can see, there is a high volume of the red zeros, the non-saw timber trees, and the yellow trees that have died, as compared to a map of 9 stands that were planted with controlled pollinated and varietals. As you see here in this map, there are a lot more saw timber potential trees, fewer trees that are not going to produce a saw log, that have some type of defect that could have been, that could be genetic, or the trees have died. As you can see, elite genetics and stocking, you can't thin your way to heaven. You can plant fewer trees per acre using controlled pollinated and varietals, but you cannot thin your way to heaven. So going back in this stand, if you tried to thin all of that out, if you tried to thin at the time of thinning, if you removed every tree that was not going to be a crop tree, you're going to have large gaps in the stand. With this plantings, going in and removing the non-saw timber trees and then removing ultimate to allow for growth at thinning time, you can see that you will still have a fully stocked stand after the first thinning. Now let's look at how MCP or controlled pollinated impacts your revenue per acre and your saw timber potential. As I stated earlier, your open pollinated baseline tree, your revenue per acre, you're looking at probably about $3,000 per acre. You're looking at about a 50% increase in saw timber potential over a non-improved loblolly pine, as compared to controlled pollinated families, where you're looking at a revenue per acre of somewhere around $5,000 per acre and an increase in saw timber potential of up to 77% more saw timber over an unimproved pine tree. Now, I would like to demonstrate the seedling revenue calculator. Now, this is a proprietary program that we have at ArborGen that we like to share with our partners. And in this program, you can compare 2 scenarios. One scenario will compare your base planting, and then you can compare planting the second scenario with controlled pollinated seedlings and see how they compare at the end. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to run a simple scenario in the seedling revenue calculator. And the first thing that we want to do is to pick the physiographic region that you're located in. So with this cell highlighted, and you see the little drop down arrow, just click that. And if you are in the lower coastal plain, the upper coastal plain or Piedmont, Arkansas, North Louisiana, Texas, South Louisiana, or North Alabama, North Mississippi. You also have the Atlantic coast north. So knowing your physiographic region is vital to getting the correct output from this calculator. So since I am located in North Alabama and North Mississippi, I'm going to select the North Alabama, North Mississippi 605 trees per acre. This also has a preset for your trees per acre that you're planting. Then once I select that region, I can go over and click Select Region Update. And as you will see here, my trees per acre has changed, and there has been some internal changes in the workings of the program. Now we're going to compare OP Advanced to MCP Advanced in this scenario. And to keep things simple, we're just going to use a standard 10 acres. So for scenario 1, your base genetic category, we're trying to decide if we're going to use OP Advanced, or for this scenario, we have decided we're going to use OP Advanced seedlings. These are the lowest genetic in the open pollinated category. So with this, we're going to input 10 acres. Now, as you can see, when I click the down arrow and it moves to the next cell, it automatically calculates the number of seedlings needed, if you'll follow along with my cursor. 6,050 trees that are needed. Your seedling cost is set at $62 a thousand, and that thus yields a total cost for the 10 acres of $375, or a total cost of $37.50 per acre. Now, with a input of 11 cents cost per seedling to plant that seedling, your planting cost for the total 10 acres is going to be $666, or your cost for planting per acre is going to be $66.60, thus yielding a total cost per acre, including planting cost and seedlings, of $104.10, for a grand total for the full 10 acres of being $1,041. Now, should you want to change any of these highlighted cells, you can. So for instance, if you want to change your trees per acre for this cell, you can come in and you can change it to 605, 545, or another number. Here, if your seedlings did not cost $62 per thousand, let's say they cost $60 per thousand, you can come in and you can change that as well, and it will adjust the numbers. However, we're going to, for this initial run, we are going to change it back to $66 a thousand, just to keep things simple. Also, if your planting cost per seedling, say for some people they can get them planted for 8 or 9 cents a tree, you can also change this value as well. But we're just going to go with the default values for simplicity. Now, we're going to come down to scenario 2, and remember we said we were going to compare an open pollinated advanced seedling or a mass control pollinated advanced seedling. So we're going to select the cell beside MCP-A, which stands for mass control pollinated advanced, and we're going to input the same 10 acres. Click the down arrow, and we're going to leave it at 605 trees per acre. Here, your number of seedlings needed for the full 10 acres is 6,050. Your seedling cost per 1,000 seedlings is $165 because we're now in the control pollinated category. Total seedling cost is going to be $998 for a seedling cost per acre of $99.80. Again, using the default 11 cents per seedling for planting cost, comes out to be $666 or $66.60 per acre. This yields a total cost per acre of $166.40 and a grand total for the full 10 acres of $1,664. Now, as you can see here at the bottom, your per acre is going to give you your totals and then your differences. So again, this is your total that is showing is going to cost per acre to plant with the MCP Advanced, and that's the total cost for the full 10 acres. On a per acre basis, here the $59.90 is the additional cost per acre that you're going to pay to plant MCP Advanced instead of OP Advanced. And for the grand total of 10 acres, it's going to cost $599. Seems like a lot until we look at the revenue. So the next step is to click Revenue Update, and it performs the calculations in the background. Then you can see the real big difference. Okay, again, going back to review your landowner revenue calculator, North Alabama and North Mississippi, you have it broken down into Scenario 1 and to Scenario 2. OP Advanced, as we said, was $53 per acre. These are your revenues. This is your revenue dollars per acre. If you planted the OP Advanced at your first thinning, you're going to yield $53 per acre for your thinning. When it comes time to clear cut the stand, you're going to yield $2,059 per acre for a total revenue dollars per acre of $2,111 of 10 acres planted. So your total revenue for the full 10 acres is going to be $21,115. Now, the revenue from Scenario 2 at thinning time, compared to getting $53 per acre with the OP Advanced, it's going to yield $460 per acre at the time of thinning. When you clear cut the stand, instead of yielding $2,059, it's going to yield $2,711. for a total revenue per acre of $3,171 and a total revenue for the full 10 acres of $31,712. Thus, the increased revenue from you going from OP Advanced to MCP Advanced seedlings is going to be a total of $10,598. For an additional investment of $599, you yielded or received a increase in your revenue of over $10,000. That yields an incremental return of, for every $1 invested for advanced genetics, you received a revenue of $18, or an 18-to-1 revenue. If you want to go down and look at the assumptions of this analysis, you can see that your first thinning for the OP Advance was conducted at age 13. Your first thinning for your MCP Advance was not conducted until age 18. And your final harvest were both at age 30. Your bare land value calculated with your OP Advanced in Scenario 1 was just $182 per acre. However, with Scenario 2 and your mass control pollinated seedlings, your bare land revenue has increased to $419. And that is how you can use the ArborGen's seedling revenue calculator. So to back up there on the revenue calculator, as you saw, there was a considerable increase, especially in the value of what was harvested from the stand in the first thinning. If you notice, the first thinning for the open pollinated stand was conducted at age 13. However, for the control pollinated stand, it was not conducted until age 18. The increase in revenue from the two stands, however, is due to the increased volume of chip and saw seedlings or chip and saw trees that are on the stand at the time of the first thinning. With the open pollinated seedlings, the majority of the trees at age 13 the majority of the stand at age 13 was primarily pulpwood. With the control pollinated seedlings, though, at age 18, the majority of those stems were chip and saw trees. They went to a higher value product. Now let's look at stocking types. At ArborGen, we produce bare root and containerized seedlings. In my past presentations, I've usually asked which one, should you plant bare root or should you plant containers? And the final answer was yes, you should plant one or the other. However, just because you plant containerized seedlings does not always mean that you're going to get a better final product at the end. The container or the bare root is just the mode of transportation or the way the seedling is grown in the nursery. It has nothing to do with the genetics that's in the tree. The container, if you put a second gen base genetic in a containerized tree and you plant it, it's still going to be susceptible to rust. It's still going to have more crooked stems. It's still going to have more forks than a controlled pollinated seedling. Likewise, if you plant a bare root seedling that is controlled pollinated, it's going to have better growth. The misconception between the containerized and the bare root is strictly based on that initial growth. Containerized seedlings, they get you a longer planting window, and they may get you a little bit of better survival at the beginning of the stand, but it has nothing to do with the genetics that's in that tree. The bare root, if you have a site that has deep topsoil, it doesn't have a history of droughty conditions, the bare root will do just as well or will be as fine. There's more bare root seedlings produced and planted in the Southeast still today than there are containerized. The container is just simply the container is just simply the mode of transportation. And if any of you are having any or thinking of any questions that you might want to ask, there will be time at the end of the presentation for question and answer. You'll just simply be able to type your question into the Q&A portion there in Zoom that you're watching this on, and we'll get to your questions there at the end.
My name is Terry Cross. I'm in the consulting business. We've planted just about everything they got. I would say probably the MCP varieties is what we planted the most. You know, I'm convinced now that those trees are worth the money that you put into them. For a long time, I'd seen some models and stuff on computers. I know they had a tour a few years back in South Carolina, and I saw the real deal. It convinced me that the trees definitely would perform. Regarding specific results, planting Arborgem seedlings, good survival, growth, you know, the quality of the trees, the straightness, you know, they just seem to put out a superior product. I would recommend Arborgem seedlings to others for a lot of the reasons I've said earlier. It's just, you know, the results of the trees, the service that you get from their sales force. They can make things happen, you know, in a very efficient way.
If you'd like to see how the MCP trees will grow in the field, here's a great example. This is an MCP elite seedling in Burke County, Georgia, after 1 year of growing. After its first growing season after being planted. Here is a 2-year-old seedling that's completed its second year of growth in Arkansas. And then here's another 2-year-old or tree that's just finished its second growing season in Georgia. What I would like for you to pay attention in these photos to, however, is not the fast growth, but the form of the stems. Here's MCP in Georgia at age 3 after it's completed 3 growing seasons. MCP in the Piedmont region, which is North Alabama, North Mississippi, and North Georgia at 3.5 years old at 18 feet. And here is another MCP stand in Warren County, Georgia, compared to a non-Arborgem OP age 4 that is there to the right of it. As you can see, the Arborgem MCP has outgrown the open pollinated that is adjacent. MCP in Texas at age 4. MCP in Wheeler County, Georgia, which is in the upper coastal plain or the Piedmont at age 6. 8-year-old MCP in Davis County, Georgia, Jeff Davis County, Georgia at age 8 at 35 feet. And then a 9-year-old MCP in Virginia. And one thing I want you to notice in these photos are the straight stems, the small limbs, and just the great form of the tree. Not the fast growth, but the form at the end of the rotation. Okay, sorry about that. Now here's an MCP Piedmont seedling at age 10 that's 50 feet tall. Again, notice the straight stems and the small limb diameters. Coastal plain seedlings, age 12, at 58 feet tall. Very straight stems, all have saw timber potential that they are growing into, allowed to grow out to the final harvest will be saw timber quality trees. Here's an MCP stand at age 16 in South Carolina. And here's the same stand at age 20 that has grown at that age into 79 feet. All straight stems, small limbs, small crowns. So here we have another customer testimonial.
I'm David Hogan, owner of Hogan Forest Services. We manage timber and CSRA for the past 36 years. This is a tract that was a soil bank plantation that was clear cut in the late 80s, and it was grown back. It was hardwood scrubs, and we converted it back into MCPs. These trees are planted on marginal soil quality at 4 years old, and they're 15 to 20 feet tall. So they're planted on a 475 to 500 seedlings per acre. And what we do is very high quality planting. You get good survival, and you can lower your seedling costs. Arborgem MCPs, I experimented with them the first couple of years and saw how they performed, and then I've been suggesting them to other clients. And this year we're going to plant over 500,000 MCPs. If I had a brand new landowner and didn't know anything about seedling choices, I'd take him out to different seedling sites and show him MCPs and OPs, and usually they choose the MCPs.
One thing to keep in mind about if you want to use our MCP seedlings is it's always advisable to order early. As you saw from that graph I showed earlier in the presentation, the demand has gone up year over year. And this past planting season was no different. We sold out of our MCP products real early in the season before planting season started. And thus there were individuals that just due to demand were not able to get the MCP families that they wanted. We can only produce so many, and we are always trying to maximize our production of our controlled pollinated, but the demand is usually so high that we always sell out of them. So it's always advisable to order early. Now I'd like to go over how we are strategically placed across the Southeast with being able to provide our partners with the service that they need. As you see here, this is our Aubergine Bullard Nursery in Bullard, Texas. You can see it services down into Louisiana, all over into Arkansas. We have our Jasper, Texas Nursery that services Louisiana, South Mississippi, and up into southern Arkansas. We have our Bluff City Nursery that is in Bluff City, Arkansas. It is strategically located to service a large area in different states. We have our Selma, Alabama Nursery that is our hardwood producing nursery. I have not mentioned in the presentation, but at Aubergine we also produce hardwoods. But this nursery is also strategically located to provide service for deliveries and pickups for our products. We have our Shellman, Georgia Nursery. That is our largest nursery, and it is strategically located to service North Florida, Alabama, up into South Carolina, and into Tennessee. We have our Belleville, South Carolina Nursery that is strategically located to service that area. We have our Taylor Nursery that is also able to service a large area, all of South Carolina, North Carolina, parts of Georgia, and all the way down almost into Florida. We have a Blenheim, South Carolina nursery that is able to service up into North Carolina, Virginia, over into East Tennessee, South Carolina, and over in close to Georgia. We also have distribution facilities strategically located across the Southeast. As you see here, we have several coolers that are located in Mississippi, on over into Louisiana, Texas, down into North Florida, and then up into the Carolinas. So if you overlay all of our nurseries and our cooler locations, we are strategically located in the Southeast to service just about everybody that is looking to reforest their property with Aubergine seedlings. If you have any questions, please enter those into the question and answer section now, and I will hand this over to Miss Kathy Quinn for those questions that you have already sent in.
Thanks, Paul. We have one from Wayne. Why wait till 18 years on the MCP for thinning? Is that time needed for natural delimbing?
No, that is not necessary. In that scenario, the program, the background calculations that were running in the back, that was just the scenario that it exported, that it calculated. We are seeing with controlled pollinated seedlings, we are actually seeing earlier thinnings. We have people that are reducing their planting stock and are actually being able to thin at age 12. So it just depends on your markets in your general area, and it also depends on the size of your trees.
Great, thank you, Paul. We have actually two questions wanting to know if we have MCPs in hardwoods.
No, we do not have MCP in hardwoods. Tree improvement in hardwoods is behind compared to loblolly pine. The tree improvement started in loblolly pine in the 50s, like I stated earlier, because of a need to feed the demand for the products, paper products, and lumber products. We have not had tree improvement, broad scale tree improvement in hardwoods until recently. The White Oak Initiative was an initiative started by a group out of actually the University of Kentucky. Now they have started a tree improvement program for white oak to help meet the demand and the lack of supply of quality white oak logs for the stave mill demand, basically going into the production of whiskey barrels and bourbon barrels. But that is in its infancy. We have not gotten very far into that.
Thanks, Paul. How do people access the seedling cost calculator?
You can access the seedling cost calculator by contacting your reforestation advisor for your territory. Send them an email or call them and tell them you'd like to have a demonstration, or you'd like to get more questions or ask more questions, or just run some scenarios by and see what it outputs, and for your personal property. But just call one of us. We'll be glad to work with you. Okay,
another question. What growth and yield model are you using for the financial model projections?
That would be a good question for our in-house biometrician, Dr. Rafael De La Torre. He is the one that actually handles the growth and yield program that's running in the background of the calculator. So that would be a great question for him. If you would like to reach out to me after this is over with, and I'll be able to, I'll ask him and get his input.
Okay, have another question. How do prices compare for OP containers versus MCP bare root? Which would you recommend if cost is a concern?
Again, it is always better to go with the higher genetic. That way there is less of a risk of planting trees and them not growing out and having the growth character or the quality traits that you're looking for in your final stand. Also, it depends on your site. If you have a high quality site, it's always better to go with a better genetic, simply because you're increasing you're creating value on your property. If you plant the containers and it's still a low genetic in the container, again, it's not going to grow out to a better tree because it's in the genetics. It's not in the delivery process.
Paul, what is the recommended number or range of MCP trees per acre?
With MCP, we recommend a range of anywhere from 435 trees to the acre, which is a 10 by 10, to 544, which is an 8 by 10. Somewhere in that range. You can use somewhere in that you are going to really experience the quality growth traits that you're looking for.
Okay. Do companies have the same MCP seed sources or have their own?
We have our own. We have our own seed sources. We have families that are proprietary to us. Our competitors, our members, or our competitors have seed that is part of the co-op. We have our own proprietary seed that we produce and make available to the public.
Okay, we've got several here. I'm not sure we'll get to all of them, but we'll do our best. How does Arborgen partner with the landowner? Just providing seedlings, or will you do the site prep, planning, etc.?
We partner with the landowner just as we are the seedling producer. However, with that partnership, we will come out, we will look at your property. We will make recommendations on what genetic based on your landowner objectives. We can look at your property and tell you, what families would perform best based on what you want to produce. We do not provide the site prep. We do not provide the tree planting. We are the nursery and the seedling growers and the tree improvement.
Okay. Do you have longleaf MCP?
No, currently there is not a controlled pollinated longleaf genetic, simply because longleaf's native range is a lot less than the loblolly's native range. Plus, the longleaf is a lot slower growing. Again, just like with the hardwoods, the tree improvement process is not advanced far enough along to take in longleaf. However, it is just like with the white oaks, they have started recently a tree improvement co-op at NC State for longleaf. Again, just like with the hardwoods, it's still in its infancy.
Great. Thanks, Paul. What is the recommendation on a 2 thinning process versus a 1 thinning and final clear?
It all depends on your market in your area at that time. Some people choose to do a 2 thinning process simply because they can extend the stand without having to go into another reforestation project early. Again, it's all depending on your markets. If you do an early thin and then want to go and conduct a second thinning to take out chip and saw and small saw timber, that's a possibility. It just depends on, like I said, your markets in your area, and they're all different. And you have to pick the one that is best for you.
Okay. Here's another one from Maurice. What effect does tip moth damage have on MCP forking?
Tip moth, that's a very good question, Maurice. I encounter in my area a lot of tip moth activity. The final the answer to the question is nothing. It doesn't have anything. It does not affect the tree, its growth. It slows it down a little bit, but as far as form, it doesn't. The Nantucket pine tip moth, which is the complete name of it, they will attack the buds of a pine tree, and they can have up to 5 attacks per growing season. However, once the trees reach a ceiling height of between 12 to 15 feet, the tip moth usually move on to another. They move on. They do not continue to attack the tree. I like to explain it as the tip moth were here a long time before we had tree improvement and we're managing forestry. They'll be here a long time after us. If you look at the stands across the Southeast, you don't really see any of those lasting effects from the tip moth, i.e. you see the straight stems, you see the small crowns. I promise you those trees in certain areas had previously been attacked by tip moth, but they outgrew the attack and they continued to grow. They were not forked. It didn't affect the final product.
Great. Tom wants to know that I've read that higher densities, 600 trees per acre or greater, have more disease and insect resistance and blowdown danger. Is the density you recommend based on a site index?
That's really 2 questions there, talking about the site index of the stand. Getting back to the question about the tree density, blowdown danger, and insect attack. Higher, let me break that into the first question and talk about the insect activity. Higher planting density thus yields tighter stands, and it causes the trees to become stressed more, either because of lack of resources, too many trees, not enough nutrients in the soil, too many trees, not enough water, you go into a drought effect. That weakens the tree's defense against, let's face it, the southern pine beetle. Also, if you have tighter grouping or tighter stands with more trees, you do not get a really good wind flow through the stand. We could spend all day talking about the southern pine beetle, but basically, in an attack, the female pine beetle releases a pheromone that attracts the males. Well, that's what builds up. So if you have trees that are planted further apart, you get more of a wind dispersal through the stand, basically scattering that scent, and it helps to reduce the amount of attack from the pine beetle. So that's two things there. That's you can, by planting fewer trees per acre, you don't stress the trees and you get more wind flow through there, and you have a less of an instance of pine beetle attack. As far as wind blown, the thinner stands, you don't have any more wind blown damage from the lower planting stock, because we're not talking about a big difference. We're talking about a matter of feet between trees. As the trees continue to grow, the stand's going to close up, and you're still going to have a fully stocked stand.
I've got another couple of questions here. I'm afraid we're not going to get to all of them, but why do you have 3 types of MCP?
We have 3 types of MCP based on the characteristics or the traits. We have, just like when you go and purchase a vehicle, you have this model, and then the higher end model. It's all to meet the landowner's objectives. And some people that find that the MCP Advanced meets their needs and meets what their goals for their property. The MCP Select is the mid-tier. It's a step up from the Advanced. You have higher grades and quality traits, have a little bit better grade in yield. And as you go up, that is to provide for those landowner objectives. And then when you top out at the Elite, again, it just depends on which model meets your objectives. And we have all of them. We have the Advanced, the Select, and the Elite. And now in the coastal region, we have one higher than that is a 2.0, MCP 2.0. And their growth traits and growth rate is just phenomenal.
We have, we'll do one more question since we're getting to the end of our program here. Alan in Alabama asked slash pine versus loblolly. I'm guessing he's wanting to know which one would you recommend?
Right. Alan, the difference between slash pine and loblolly is really just depends on your site. Slash pine does not have the advancements in the tree genetics as loblolly does, but it all depends on your site. Alabama, in Alabama's large, slash pine is in the southern part of the state. Loblolly is all across the entire state. Again, just depends on your landowner objectives and your site, what you would like to plant.
Great. Okay, Paul, I think we'll wrap that up. We did have some questions that we did not get to, and I apologize for that. But if you would like to reach out to one of our reforestation advisors, grab their number off the screen and give them a call and be happy to help you. So thank you, Paul.
Thank y'all, and thank y'all for attending and taking the time.